Welcome to another episode of Bitcoin Magazine Live. I am your host, Q, and I am joined by my fellow one-lettered man of mystery, P. Are you there, P?
I am, my friends. It's cold as fuck where I am, but I'm here. I'm excited. We've got an incredible guest today. We've got a lot of stuff to cover. Q, tell the people who we're talking to later.
We're going to be talking to Joe Hall from, as I like to call them, Shitcoin Telegraph. He'll be joining us later today. I had a wonderful time meeting him and spending some time with him in Amsterdam. So we're going to pick up those conversations live for you guys to chime in on, join, and chirp at us while we talk silliness. And then, of course, we'll kick things off with news and notes. Chris, do we have a spaces today?
Nope, not today.
Okay. Ignore me. News and notes. And that starts right now. So it turns out, I guess Kanye West really does own a Satoshi Nakamoto hat. Dope. Again, we're going to continue to hammer home the point that Kanye has long been aware of, has commented on Bitcoin, never to say like how much he has or if he actually has held for as long as he's known about it, but he has been well aware of Bitcoin itself. And of course, it couldn't be another news day without Kanye keeping himself out of the news, as Kanye has recently announced that he is going to be purchasing the social media platform Parler. Parler's parent company announced the deal on Monday morning, saying that Kanye West has made a groundbreaking move into the free speech social media space and will never have to fear being removed from social media again. This, of course, comes off the heels of both Twitter and Instagram, I guess, locking Kanye out, banning him from his accounts. This is, I think, a very interesting move. As many of you guys saw on our thumbnail, we have the three musketeers of Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Kanye West, and each of them have or soon will have their own social media platform with Truth Social, Twitter, and Parler, respectively.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. You use the term, being banned from these platforms. I would use the term, putting their nuts in a vice, because their livelihood is directly connected to their ability to reach as many people as possible. They have these platforms. And so I think it's very interesting, the move in this direction. I also think it's interesting that the kind of on the side of heavy censorship, it has played out in such a way that it's the more liberal outlets or more left-leaning pundits that are calling for these types of censorship-heavy actions. And it just happens to be the case that on the other side, these are three people that are identified as being, right of center. I think that's pretty fascinating. The other thing I want to say is that the exact terms of the Parler deal were not disclosed, but Parler said that it must still enter into a definitive agreement with Kanye and expects to close in the fourth quarter. Parliament Technologies, which is their parent organization, will remain involved apparently by providing technical support and cloud support, whatever the fuck that means. But yeah, these three, very well-known figures are all in the process of trying to create censorship-resistant social media platforms. It'll be interesting to see whether that actually happens or if it actually just ends up being censorship-heavy, more right-wing platforms. We'll see.
P, I'm gonna stop you right there though. While these three characters are definitely more conservative, they have also labeled Russell Brand and Glenn Greenwald, who are very more left of center or more left leaning. Both of them, and they have both been censored or stopped. So I think it's just anyone that goes against their narrative.
That is a great fucking point. I'm super glad you brought that up.
These three are that case, but Russell Brand and Glenn Greenwald, I actually really respect them. They do not share the same views as me, but they are incredible reporters, journalists, whatever you want to lump them in is. But they literally put Glenn Greenwald as an alt-right conspiracy theorist. I'm like, what? Like, what are we talking about here?
I want to retract what I said. You are 100% right. That's insane. Glenn Greenwald is fucking amazing. I was able to have conversations with him and his people for Bitcoin 2022. One of the most effective investigative journalists in modern America. And of course, Russell Brand is Russell Brand. He needs no introduction. You're absolutely correct. It's just about conforming to the narrative.
It's all about framing. Like, these three are definitely more conservative. I will give you that. But like, anyone that goes against their narrative, they're willing to lump in this alt-right extremist conspiracy.
You're right. It's so insane. It's so insane labeling both of them as alt-right extremists as well, just because.
Yeah. And then one last thing I'll caveat here is I think that they may be missing the forest from the trees with this. So I think it's awesome that they are building their own platforms or trying to acquire their own platforms. I think they're going to run to hurdles without Bitcoin that they may not realize. Like, so, okay, let's say that they don't use Azure, which is Microsoft, or like Amazon Cloud Services in order to host their servers. But that doesn't mean that there can't be ways of like, oh, you have your own server farm now. It's like, oh, well, the government doesn't really like what you said, so we're getting subpoena and we're shutting down, your power plant, or we're going to come and we're going to do like various things to prevent you from transmitting data or electricity. So I think that it gets more difficult. I know Bitcoin is still in the early stages, as we say, and they're trying to build out ways to make it more robust and more censorship resistant. But even with these companies, if they're dealing with banks instead of dealing with solely with Bitcoin, those can be shut off in a moment's whim, even if it's a more conservative bank. I mean, we saw this literally with GoFundMe, and then we saw this with Give Send Go, which is a more conservative outlet for the truckers convoy in Canada. So, GoFundMe, I'd say more left leaning. They got shut off, or they shut it off immediately. Then Give Send Go is like, hey, we're gonna not abide by the censorship or of the Canadian government. And then as soon as they hit Canadian banks, the Canadian banks confiscate it. The only thing that really worked was Bitcoin. Yes, granted, some of it was unfortunately confiscated by the government after they had like raided one of the organizers' houses, and he hadn't given out the private keys. But everything else that was given out, the Canadian truckers were able to self-custody or take it into self-custody by recovering it via seed words, basically. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add there, but that's pretty much my two sats.
I'd love to just pose one more question of, at a certain point, like how many of these social media platforms becomes too many? Like, do either of you have a Truth Social account?
Fuck no.
So I do. I actually do have a Truth Social account. I follow
you DM Trump?
No, I just follow him. Like, there are certain posts that have come out, like when he had his meltdown over Elon Musk, I was like, there's no way he's saying this. There's no way he's saying this. I go on, oh my God, he's really saying this. And then there was like another meltdown a few weeks ago of like him starting a thread of like, why are people so mean? And it was just like, this can't be real. This can't be real. And then you go on. It's like, no, it's real. Like,
I think, I mean, just to frame it again, we're talking about like censorship, or people being censored, trying to start their own platforms, using their social clout to try to sort of push these platforms forward. I'll say again, the actual answer to these problems is not a new, social media platform per se. It's a new protocol that enforces censorship resistance and decentralization. In my mind, Nostra is an interesting, it's a super interesting technology that is currently getting a lot of play. I think moving in that direction rather than trying to support or endorse specific platforms, because again, the reason these entities are doing that, the reason that Trump is supporting, whatever he's supporting, and Kanye is supporting whatever he's supporting, is because they believe that they can monetize those platforms. So this is not about necessarily censorship resistance or decentralization, though that is that's kind of their excuse. This is about them creating a system that they can then monetize. And I think it's really, really important that we remember that. And that as Bitcoiners, we are laser focused on what actually matters, which is creating these systems and supporting these systems that allow us to receive information from all different types of people, especially the people we disagree with, because that is how we learn. You need, iron sharpens iron. You need to be in conversations with and receiving information from intelligent, articulate people that you disagree fundamentally with, because that's the only way that you actually can form your own opinions and really battle test them. But let's keep going. We got a lot to cover today. We got a new story. You may have heard about, I jokingly talk about like insects. Everybody should be eating insects. And there's a new angle here, which is 3D printed meat. We're talking Star Trek bullshit. Machines that basically have proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, and they just like spray them out through nozzles. There's a new company called Refined Meat that has struck a partnership with Boost to boost 3D printed meat sales in Europe. These types of systems are, from a technical perspective, in my opinion, they're very cool, but I can't stand, and I think they have an important place in our future, but I can't stand the angle that is currently being pushed as these are a solution to quote unquote energy problems. These are a solution to, social ills, which is, that narrative is totally bullshit. So specifically, Israel's Refined Meat has struck a partnership with importer Grouty Meats to drive European distribution of its new meat steak cuts produced in 3D printers, it said on Thursday. The startup raised $170 million in Series A financing this year. They operate large-scale meat printers in Tel Aviv, and they have a new factory in the Netherlands, and they are hoping to establish their products as an alternative to conventionally produced meat. This is all hype. These are... That's what we need to be able to do. We need to be able to separate the hype from the actual fact and the value from the sort of flash in the pan and the marketing bullshit. What do you guys think here? What's going on? Will you eat these plant-based 3D printed steaks?
Let the record show that P will eat the insects before he eats the 3D printed meat.
Fuck yeah. Insects are from nature, bro. Insects evolved over hundreds of millions of years. They're there. They have protein in them. They can jump around. They make weird noises. This is not the same.
Q, I want your thoughts.
I mean, P, you act as though you've never eaten a McDonald's Big Mac or had some sort of fast food that is quite possibly like as close to 3D printed food and genetically engineered food as we have presently. So there's a degree of this where I'm like, all right, fine. If you're up in arms about 3D printed foods right now, I don't ever want to see a picture of you eating any sort of fast food. Like, you better be one of those just like clean as can clean be diet type of people.
Well, I think you make a great point, which is like, honestly, these may or may not be better than the fast food bullshit. Because when, to your point, when you are eating like chicken McNuggets, tendies, you're literally eating like the most disgusting chickens that you can ever imagine, like fucking force-fed, like foie gras style, sores all over their bodies, genital herpes, being forced into like a meat grinder, and then it comes out of a fucking soft serve machine and is squeezed into a mold, and that's the chicken tendy that you get, right?
It's like a pink glob. Like, people need to understand all chicken nuggets at every fast food restaurant, from like Chick-fil-A down to McDonald's and everyone in between. It's a pink glob that gets fried.
Yeah, 100%.
And then they add color to make it less pink and more brown.
Yeah, exactly. So your point is well taken. Like, these are probably better for you, if not at least the same as fucking fast food. So again, my issue with this is the way it's being presented. It's like, this is a solution to world hunger. This is a solution to Bitcoin consuming too much energy, which is horseshit. That's my problem.
So there's another thing that I wanted to bring up on this as well. It was a video that I saw coming out of Amsterdam area in the Netherlands last week, where I guess like going to like 7-8-year-old kids' classrooms where government officials like showing them different bugs that are acceptable, that have like high sources of nutrients and stuff. And then the caption was sort of like they're normalizing this thought now today in this generation, so that in 20 years or in 10 years when they're older, it's a lot easier for them to say like, hey, like we need to switch our protein source, because we've already sort of ingrained in their brain from such an early age, like these are acceptable things to eat one day. So
I'm saying it. Lion King was propaganda, my guy. When they're eating the bugs and they make them look appetizing with Simba.
Dude, I gotta say, I've never seen a bug like never
propaganda,
has there been
my guy.
a better ad
propaganda
for gummy worms than the scene when Simba is eating all of those bugs with Timon and Pumbaa.
If you eat lobster, you fuck lobster. That's all I'm going to say on that.
So, Chris, are you like, let's ask you, your kids come home and say, daddy, like, we should stop eating steak. We should either have this cricket steak or we should have a 3D printed steak. Like, are you disowning your child?
Yes.
Seriously. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Jesus.
They brought it up there. I'm making them eat that, and then I'm eating the real steak, and they'll be upset as they're eating them.
You're going to give your kids cricket while you just eat a nice, meaty, juicy steak.
Yeah.
I can't wait for Chris's kids to be vegan.
All right, Chris, what's our next story?
So we have seen massive protests in Paris right now. Obviously, this comes off the back of a few weeks ago. We were seeing protests in the street of Italy. They were protesting, obviously, rising energy prices and rising cost of living costs. So I actually have a short clip. We'll play this right here. So as you can see, there's tons of people in the streets of Paris right now rioting. So it looks very peaceful.
That doesn't look like a riot, Chris.
Yeah, that was
Protest,
That was a
not
very
riot.
peaceful.
peacefully
protest.
protesting.
People were sipping
as we know
wine.
historically, this normally trails off into massive protests and unrest. I'm sure the political elites are not happy that they are protesting this. So I'll just leave it at that. Any thoughts there? Or do we want to move on?
Let's keep going.
No, I think it's important to know, like, we continue to see protests all over the world. Like, it is not slowing down. It may be for different reasons in different pockets of the world, but people are at a core, if you break this down to first principles, getting fed up with those that have been in charge and have controlled power. Like, if you really break down every protest from the outbreaks in Sri Lanka to what's currently and continuing to go on in Iran, down to what we see all throughout Europe, it's all people systemically fed up with the system and the powers that be. Like, I'd argue even like Black Lives Matters falls into that category of like sick of the systemic issues and the systemic powers that be.
Yeah, definitely.
People are sick of this. We're all fighting. We're all on the same team. Just remember that, guys. Let's talk though Credit Suisse, because we haven't talked about Credit Suisse in a while. But they are going to begin the sale of their U.S. asset management arm. I mean, this should come as no surprise. There were rumors floating that they've started to sort of float and hear offers for this when they quickly denied it, which should have just been a signal of, yes, we are doing this. We just do not want to openly admit it because our stock price is already going so down low that this would just absolutely crater us overnight. I mean, there was also reports coming out, I don't know if you guys saw, out of Saudi Arabia, as they may be the ones potentially interested in buying up these distressed assets, being Credit Suisse and different branches of their company. So it's just going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I think everyone around the world is watching Credit Suisse and what happens to their business and different divisions of it. But I would be very interested to see if Saudi Arabia gets involved and they could turn into like the last backholder. Like, that would be wild. I would love it. Low key though.
Yep.
Only low key. Just a little.
Just a little bit. Not too much.
Right,
but Pete, let's talk about the EU, because they are taking some shots at Bitcoin right now.
They sure are. The EU has put Bitcoin in the crosshairs with crypto energy labeling plan. This is like the Prop 76 or whatever it is in California that's like, this product may cause cancer. It's fucking bullshit. The European Union will develop an energy efficiency label for cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin in a bid to rein in the growing electricity consumption of the industry. The EU will work with international partners to come up with a grading measure that will encourage more environmentally friendly crypto systems, such as proof of stake, according to draft proposals seen by Bloomberg News set to be announced Tuesday. The EU will also call on countries to target miners' energy consumption this winter as it tries to navigate the season with far less Russian gas. The quote is, just as their use has grown significantly, the energy consumption of cryptocurrencies has more, the EU's executive arm said in a draft action plan. This is fucking infuriating to me. It is so disingenuous to target these types of things while still allowing people to use clothes dryers to dry their clothes, have Christmas lights, heat their homes. And even that is actually sort of a... it's like a distraction even, because you should not be able to tell people how to use the electricity and the energy that they have paid for on the open market. If somebody buys electricity, as we all do when we pay our electricity bill, you're able to use that for whatever the fuck you want in your own home. But why are people so fixated on the idea of trying to curtail proof of work mining systems? The reason is because it has nothing to do with the amount of energy that is being used. It is 100% about trying to create social pressure to tamp down interest in these technologies, which are essential for the future of humanity, and simultaneously undermine the goals of these centralized entities like the central banks and the EU and the systems that they're trying to uphold. What do you guys think?
I mean, this continues to be a tax on what we, especially we in Bitcoin, very strongly, maybe to a degree of bias, believe to be the one opportunity to take control of the money out of the power of central banks around the world. And that is becoming a more and more serious threat. And any and all attempts to subvert growth and adoption of this technology, to me, seems like a defense mechanism for the fiat system to continue to just prolong its time in existence, its lifespan, if you will. It's interesting that, and I might bleed into the next story a little bit, but as we continue to report on the decisions out of the UK and the Bank of England, we saw and reported on the influx of open interest in Bitcoin and Bitcoin purchases out of the UK. And people are seeing Bitcoin, especially, as this life raft. And there's nothing they can do to stop it other than to try to shame us, other than to make our peers make us feel bad for doing it. It's no different than the whole masking issue from 2 years ago. It's, well, they don't care about everyone else enough because they're not wearing a mask. So you should make sure you tell your neighbors and your family and your friends that everyone should wear a mask. Everyone should stop buying Bitcoin. Everyone should stop using Bitcoin because it uses too much energy. They don't care about everyone else if they're using Bitcoin. So it's the same attacks again. Like, it really feels to me like first principles. It's the same attack. Shame us because there's no other logical reason that they can use against us.
Yeah. I have nothing else to add. I think you guys hit it really succinct.
Let's keep going.
Let's lighten the mood a little bit.
So Bitcoin can take a bow, if only briefly. Guinness World Records book just put them in as the first decentralized cryptocurrency. Yeah, you heard that first. Every other cryptocurrency, not in there. Bitcoin 1, all other altcoins, 0. First decentralized cryptocurrency. If you go on the Guinness World Record Books website, you can also see it's a list of other things that have been awarded to Bitcoin as well, as being the oldest cryptocurrency, as being the largest market cap cryptocurrency, all these different awards. It was cool, but one that was just added this recently was the first decentralized cryptocurrency. So they gave that award to Bitcoin and to Bitcoin only. So let that be pure signal, not noise. Let's go.
Did Craig Wright or BSV win anything?
No.
Fuck no. I just want to say, I grew up with, I'm an ancient man, as we all know. We talked about it a lot on the show. I grew up with the Guinness Book of World Records. That was like the thing that I was like so excited to get. I grew up with like a full set of Encyclopedia Britannica. I'm like me, like when I was like, oh, I'm bored, I'd go pull out like a volume, and like read through it and be like memorizing all these facts so I could just like, shell knowledge. Guinness Book of World Records is one of those things. And it is, it warms the cockles of my heart to see Bitcoin officially recognized in the Guinness Book of World Records as fucking baller. That's what the title says.
Yep.
That's it. That's all I got.
I mean, look, the Guinness Book of World Record was a staple at every Scholastic book fair, and only the coolest teachers would update to the newest year's version. Absolutely. So we all at least are on the same simulation. Like that glitch for the three of us at least lined up a
Scholastic
little
book
bit.
fair. I forgot about that shit.
Dude,
that was good.
Can we discuss, because you guys just taught me this before we went live, that the Guinness Book of World Records is akin to the Michelin star restaurant.
In the sense that it was created by the beer brand Guinness.
Company. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like wild. Like I just learned this. Like Guinness beer. I mean, I knew the Michelin star thing was from Michelin tires, but
you got to tell the story. You got to inform people where the Michelin star comes from, and then we can segue into the Guinness.
I mean, it essentially was created as like this tour guide of the best restaurants given to different drivers who would buy Michelin tires, and they would be given a Michelin star for how good they were. The rest
that's serving tires to people. No,
yes, specifically tires, shoes. That's why P is actually tried about half of the Michelin starred restaurants in the world.
I fucking hate this. I fucked up. This is not my brand. I am not on board with being the shoe and tire eating guy.
Did you guys know that P sent me a message while I was in Amsterdam asking me to buy him a pair of wooden clogs because he wanted to see how the taste of wood versus leather
I have Pica. You can look it up. It's a well-known eating disorder. I'll eat whatever the fuck is in front of me. The point is, Michelin star was created by the Michelin Tire Company, which you may not know, as a marketing technique, and it actually turned into a real thing, right? It's now actually, you can effectively decide which restaurants, which, crazy fiat restaurants you want to go to. And the Guinness Book of World Records is the same thing. It was created by Guinness Beer to promote their brand, and they did a really fucking good job of it. And now it is locked into our brains, lives rent-free as an amazing part of Americana.
Yeah.
So way to go, Guinness. Way to go, Bitcoin. You fucking made it. You broke the records.
I just want to know like who gets to hold the trophy or the plaque, and if I can nominate Bitcoin Magazine in my bookshelf right there.
We can reach out to them. I know normally that if it's like goes to someone that's not known or not alive, they'll just hold it at like the Guinness World Record book plate, like museum.
We are Bitcoin Magazine.
Yeah,
producer
like,
Chris, please do that immediately. We are the oldest running, continually operating publication in the Bitcoin space. We fucking deserve that plaque, and if they don't give it to us, we're going to burn their factory down.
Guinness, this is directly to you. Do not make a mistake. Do not give this to the wrong people. We honor Bitcoin, and we would be proud to host this trophy.
I'll be back. Q, hit us with the Bank of England facts, but I'm going to be messaging them right now.
Okay, so like to be real, as I brought up yesterday and last week, quantitative easing, quantitative tightening, it seems like the Bank of England is truly playing a game of ping pong or tennis or however you want, going back and forth. Oh, we're going to quantitative ease. Actually, no. We're still in the quantitative tightening window. No, but starting soon, we're going to delay. It's going to be honest, at this point, the Bank of England, like dead, officially dead, underwater. I don't give a rat's ass what decisions they make, what they do. It is very, very clear that it has already collapsed, and it is just putting off this inevitable waiting for the U.S. Federal Reserve to provide the life raft for it to continue to sustain its doomed to fail model.
Yeah, I completely agree. Can't taper a Ponzi.
Because we can't stop warning people about CBDCs.
Yeah.
Let's warn them some more.
Yeah, so to maintain their green QR code status, to be able to attend school, after school, tens of thousands of middle school kids are just beelining for their daily routine PCR status in China to prove that they are COVID negative. This is what's happened in China since the Wuhan initial outbreak. And a green QR code, as you may have heard, is needed to access public transportation, to go into stores, to go to work, to go to school. This means that your COVID test can't be older than 48 hours. You have to keep it constantly up to date, and it costs each person $50 a month in testing fees. They're using this as a clear way to control the movement of people, to control what people are able to, whether people are able to get food, whether they're able to get education, whether they're able to earn money to, fund their families through work. There have been stories coming out around, entire regions who are protesting their COVID passports just being turned to red, just as a way to sort of like shut down their movement, because the entire country is locked down when it comes to these types of movement passports. It's super fucked up. And COVID has just become a very, very convenient excuse in order to control the populace of China and to keep them in a as a productive state as possible, which is to say a controlled state. It's super fucked up, and we need to be really careful that we don't allow that to kind of by proxy happen in the United States.
Yeah, I agree.
Another thing that is related to this kind of tangentially, but I recently discovered that China has, this is fucking crazy, they have indefinitely delayed the release of GDP and other economic stats. Like, what the fuck? You can't just not report this stuff because you don't like the numbers. Like, at least...
at least have the decency of the American government to lie to your citizens in the world about what the numbers are.
At least be like, yo, this metric we were using, which is great, but we don't like the way it turns out. At least have the decency to be like, we're changing the metric for reasons that you don't need to worry about. Just we're discontinuing it. China they're just going a step too far. They're just saying, we don't like these numbers. Neither should you. We're not publishing them anymore. Deal with it, or we'll turn your passport to red, and they'll black bag you and put you in the little cube, and then escort you through the airport in the containment cube, which is a video you can find on Twitter, by the way.
I mean, I think ultimately the big thing to really pay attention to here is not actually what China's doing, because ultimately ultimately, this is a communist country, and we shouldn't be surprised by some very authoritative actions taken by their government. What should be concerning is a CBDC is not only being talked about in communist China, it is also being talked about very openly in the EU. It is being very openly discussed and pushed forward in the United States. The idea that a country can just not report on its GDP, fine. If China wants to do it, fuck right off. But if this starts to happen in more developed nations, if this starts to happen out of European countries, if this starts to happen out of America, like, we don't live in democracies. Those will be signs to me that we have officially entered a full-blown authoritative reign in these countries.
Oh, you sweet summer child. It's always a spectrum. We're slowly inching. We're very rapidly inching closer and closer and closer to that state.
I think we're much closer to that state than we want to admit.
Exactly. Well, I'm joking around talking about China doing this. Do not make the mistake of alienating the people of China and being like, they're in this other country. We don't have to worry about that bullshit. It's happening right now. We need to view ourselves as world citizens and be promoting systems that empower all of us, not just US citizens like Bitcoin. But on that note, we're going to go to a quick commercial break, and then we're going to bring in our incredible guest, Joe, who is here to talk to us about a number of things, including what it is like to live as a free man on a Bitcoin standard. Reminder, the code BM Live still works for tickets to Bitcoin 2023, correct?
It might work for codes to Bitcoin Amsterdam, but that event has already shipped and sailed. But so don't buy those. Buy B23.
Don't buy a Bitcoin Amsterdam ticket, please. The headache that's going to cause just don't do that. Go buy a Bitcoin 23 ticket. Use promo code BM Live, and also like and subscribe down below.
Yes, we always forget to say that. Like and subscribe. You'll get all sorts of great content like this. We're also publishing all of the Bitcoin Amsterdam segments. We're releasing them in a staggered sense on our main YouTube channel, Bitcoin Magazine on YouTube. So you should definitely follow that if you want to get all of the amazing content from Bitcoin Amsterdam, including the media panel, which we'll be talking about with Joe in just a minute. We'll be back after this commercial break.
Thank you for sticking through those commercial breaks. I'm excited to introduce our guest for today. He is a reporter for Cointelegraph. However, he is also, we're not going to hold that against him here, guys. Come on now. We had a wonderful time spending time together at Bitcoin Amsterdam. He is a full-blown Bitcoin maxi, has written about Bitcoin, has written against Bitcoin, as well as lives on nothing but Bitcoin. Joe Nakamoto, welcome to the stage.
Yeah. Hello, Q. Hello, Philip. Thanks for having me on. Q, I almost didn't recognize you outside of a suit.
I'm in my normal rolled out of bed attire.
No, you are a professional. You are a news professional, Q. The washed out look you have is due to your camera, not because you are still recovering from Bitcoin Amsterdam.
You're still high.
Yes.
Probably. Probably.
Oh man, Joe, where are you? You look like you are in an undisclosed facility, protected from the government as they're trying to come after you.
Yeah, you're bang on there. I mean, the actual story is so much more banal. I was rearranging my apartment earlier and moved the sofa. It knocked the Wi-Fi cable out the wall and just completely severed it in two. And also I panicked, thinking, "Oh no, I've got this really important live stream tonight. What am I going to do?" So I'm in the local co-working space. If you can hear some crypto bro shilling his new token nearby, then that's just what Portugal's like at the moment. It's
I expect you to excuse yourself if you need to go over there and just like shake some sense into him and be like, "It's Bitcoin only."
Yeah, I mean, honestly, man, I almost live tweeted what he was saying to his in his meeting. He was having a meeting in the open space earlier, like speaking really loudly about his token. And I was like taking notes, like, fuck this guy, man. Like, fuck his token. And I was like, send, not send, send. And then I was like, my gut was like, nah, don't do it. Don't do it. This is
probably for
this,
the
this
best.
could backfire. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Well, it's great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
oh, my pleasure. Honestly, it's you guys do a great thing, and yeah, you talk a lot of sense, which is very much needed in this space.
So can't be talking about pee.
No, I just talk nonsense constantly. For our audience, can you give us, a brief history of sort of who you are, how you got into Bitcoin, and what you're focused on right now?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So I've been in Bitcoin for far less time than Jemima Kelly, and that's
solid.
It took less than 5 minutes for shots to be fired. Let it be known.
Just had to set the record straight, No, I worked at a Bloomberg subsidiary. Actually, how far should we go? I'm English, as you can probably hear, and I grew up in the UK. I left the UK when I was like 24. I'm now 29, and I've spent the past sort of 5 years bouncing around. I always wanted to find a job that allowed me to travel and work and also surf. And journalism seemed to fit the bill. I've always been quite curious. I've always liked the truth, and I've always been pretty stubborn about the truth as well. And so that ended up, that's how I ended up working for a Bloomberg subsidiary in sub-Saharan Africa and emerging markets around the world, which, I mean, the word emerging market is kind of a funny one, right? I had this conversation with Ray Youssef in the gym last week in Amsterdam, the guy from the CEO of Paxful. He was like, why are they called emerging? Like, what are they emerging into? What are they emerging from? Like, what happens post-merge? They're a monster? Like, what goes on there? But yeah, that's a conversation for another time. I bounced around there for a while, started to realize that Bitcoin was being used in a way that people, say that it's used, but it isn't actually used. So, actual peer-to-peer remittance, actual peer-to-peer payments. And so I started to report on that, but obviously I had to write the mainstream media line, which is that, Bitcoin boils oceans and there are way better cryptocurrencies out there, that sort of thing. And so, yeah, I slowly realized that this is wrong and that Bitcoin is way more than what we think it is. And this is just the start of my Bitcoin learning journey, which is which was in 2019. And I realized quite shortly afterwards, similar to Rizzo and similar to all the other Bitcoin writers, that realized that, you can't write about Bitcoin from the inside. You have to jump ship and go work at a pro-Bitcoin or a pro-crypto publication, in my instance, to be able to write the truth. And so that led to me eventually joining Cointelegraph, where I still do lots of travel to emerging markets. Like I'm going to Senegal in December, and I spent February and March in West Africa researching various pieces. I'm making my pilgrimage to El Salvador finally in November as well, which I'm absolutely delighted about. And yeah, I'm just really passionate about Bitcoin, as we all are. I wake up, breathe it. I'm always pissing off my girlfriend, talking about Bitcoin way too much. We don't quite have a Bitcoin safe word yet, but we might get there one day. She's also a maxi, naturally. We couldn't be together otherwise. But yeah, we are. I'm just super passionate about it. And I mean, I speak lots of languages, and I also I've realized that written content isn't the best way of getting over to people, so I've started to do video stuff as well. So you might see me doing highly tetrad stuff with a microphone around the world. I just actually uploaded a video from when I was in Biarritz recently at the Surfing Bitcoin conference, which is a French-speaking Bitcoin conference in France, which is awesome, by the way. You should go. Bitcoin magazine should have. I mean, I think McShane was there this year, and I can't remember who else was there from Bitcoin magazine. But yeah, that's where I met McShane for the first time. But yeah, this is me rambling on now, so I'll hand it back to you guys.
No, that was awesome, man. There's so much to dig into there. I love the idea of having a safe word with your significant other.
I need one of those, as I learned last night that I need.
It's Cardano.
Oh no. I love that
It's
idea.
not. It's not. It's not.
Something that's so inflammatory that you just like immediately stops you in your tracks, just like breaks your brain. How dare you say that word in this household?
Proof of stake.
Yeah.
I love it. Man, that's super. Go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say, I want to kind of spend some time, Joe, talking to you about like how you first started, and it wasn't necessarily in the most, dare I say, flat, like what you covered about Bitcoin was not flattering about Bitcoin. And you kind of had to have a journey of understanding, and I think shedding some layers of biases and initial thoughts that a lot of other people, especially some people that you shared a stage with, are not willing to do. Can we maybe just like discuss like what were those things that you were like, no, Bitcoin doesn't work because of this, and then it took you having that experience in Africa to then see and shed those biases?
Yeah, that's a really interesting way of putting that question. So, how did I undo my biases? I think part of it is getting burnt. We've all been a little bit burnt or rugged by shitcoins. Like I am, like many other Bitcoiners, I shitcoin first. There are still some tokens in some shitty wallet somewhere that I can't sell because there's no liquidity because it's just been completely rugged to zero. So there's the personal experience thing, and then in terms of sort of, I'm a journalist, so I'm all about primary sources and just seeing my driver, for example, which was the example I gave and I often give, he was the first guy to really show to me that Bitcoin works, and it's used in this way that we all talk about, censorship resistant money, which I can't say, and money that can't be debased, money that can't be stolen. As long as you've got your seed phrase, then you're set. And this guy called Guillaume, he used to be our driver at Bloomberg, because he would drive us to work every day, and that was just how it was. I wasn't very well paid. It was just, that was the norm. We used to have quite long chats about Bitcoin and crypto, and he effectively orange pilled me. And the big thing for him was that the government can't steal the money from him, whereas they can easily steal the money that's under your mattress, or they can debase your currency, as they've done with the West African franc or the CFA in the past. Alex Gladstein did this amazing piece about the West African franc, which is like this horrible colonial hangover currency that the French sort of concocted when they gave back power to their colonies in West Africa. But basically the note is printed and designed in the Elysee in France, which literally means that there's some white guy sat in like some university in France, and he's like writing, he's drawing like palm trees and coconuts, thinking, oh yeah, this is what we should put on the note in, West Africa. It's like the most like fucked up racist thing you can imagine, and this is still what is on the paper. I think I've got some actually. I'll grab my wallet in a sec and show you. Like the notes are just like a joke, and it's just hilarious when you think the fact that they are printed in Paris and shipped over to West Africa. This is just one example of how messed up this whole currency situation is, and it's one of the things that really riles me up about money in general, fiat-backed currencies, is that yes, in the West we have it kind of bad, but in a lot of emerging markets around the world, it's just, the situation is deplorable, and we must do more to help people realize, what is money and why Bitcoin is a money in which we can opt out of the current horrible, controlling system. I forgot the point was debunking Bitcoin and crypto. So the thing about Bitcoin and crypto is, it's evidence-based. Like, Paco de la India, the Bitcoin runner, I catch up with him quite regularly. He's the guy that's traveling around the world using only Bitcoin. And he's currently on his 22nd country, and he's trying to hit 40 countries in 500 days. And there you go, Chris knows him. He's awesome. So I catch up with him regularly just to see what his stories are like, and we have quite similar interests. And he was saying today that the Bitcoin community in Africa is massive, and it's one where people realize that Bitcoin is an actual currency. You can buy a beer with it, you can pay a taxi with it, you can do all these sort of real things. And you're not going to buy your beer with Doge, are you? I mean, yes, people do it for like the stunt, but it's not like you're going to see like a Doge accepted here sticker around the world. People are just going to laugh at you. And so I think that, yeah, the fact that it does have this first mover advantage and the fact that it does have this critical mass of adoption, that there's no real going back from that. And I just don't see, I mean, despite Cardano's best marketing efforts, particularly in Africa, where there's a huge Cardano community. I know I've said Cardano about 6 times. Yeah, no, it's awful. They're like buying up universities and being like, oh, we're going to put like your ID on the blockchain.
No shit. Oh, God.
Yeah. The guy's an excellent marketer. Charles Hoskins and whatever his name is. He knows how to build a business. But you've got to ask, why can't we do this all with Bitcoin? It really
and the answer is you can and should.
Exactly.
Interesting. So I'm curious, like, what it was like. I've been based back in the U.S. and I know you and Q, of course, were on the media desk at Bitcoin Amsterdam, and
the most professional media desk you've ever seen.
Exactly. Well, that was the thing. I was going to say.
We're live.
But to your guys' credit, like, there was all sorts of shit happening behind the scenes. And it came across as like, it was like obvious, like, yeah, there was like the sign falling down and shit, almost decapitated, Matt Odell, you saved his life, no big deal. But you guys had
Odell, you're welcome.
Exactly. You guys had amazing rapport, like, immediately. It was very funny. You guys were natural. I'm curious what it was like for you, that first, segment on the media desk, and then what it was like for you, what your experience at Bitcoin Amsterdam was, with the panel that you were on later that day. And just what your thoughts were overall.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, I am I'm more starstruck by Bitcoiners than I am by actual celebrities. Like, I've interviewed, government ministers, and I've interviewed quite sort of serious people. And then I sit next to Matt Odell and I'm like, oh shit, it's Odell. Like, it's like the boy, this is the boy. And like Q walks over. I'm like, obviously I know your face. And it's just,
I'm so insignificant, but you are kind to try to flatter me.
And I see this other guy who is like Q or something. I don't even know what it's short for. But yeah, anyway, Odell is, sorry, I shouldn't really rinse the podcast, so should I?
Keep going. Keep it going.
Yeah. I was pretty like bowled over sitting next to Adele. I'm like, fucking hell, this is fucking cool. And then you realize, oh, I've got to, I'm also here to do a job. We're here on the news desk. We've got to keep things light and keep things interesting and interactive. And I mean, the Bitcoin Magazine team in general is a bunch of Bitcoiners, and it's really easy to connect with Bitcoiners. Let's be honest. It's much easier to connect with those kind of people than shitcoiners or fiat people. Not that I should be othering, I shouldn't be creating groups, but you know what I mean, right? It's just a sort of an instant connection thing. And in terms of the news desk overall, the banter was flowing. It was an interesting and quite a funny segment, I think. I think I was definitely flirting with Mills at one point. I looked back at the YouTube video. I sent it to my girlfriend being like, lol, is this okay? And she was like, yeah, this is hilarious. Like, keep doing what you're doing. And I was like, cool.
So, like, we were the multimedia team, BM Live team, we were like, we did like sort of graveyard shifts to like manage the live stream and everything. So on the US side, we were watching you guys live on the news desk, and there's a great shot that I sent to Odell and it was like, Joe, checking out that ass. Cause you were like looking to see the thing that was about to fall on him, and you were like, but like, it looks like you're just like checking out. It was amazing. I'll send it to you. It's a great shot.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah. But yeah, man. So, I want to ask one more question about the conference itself, and then let's keep going and talk about sort of more important, broader topics. But what was it like for the panel you were on? Was definitely one of the spiciest panels. And
indeed.
Yeah. So what was your experience of that? Was it as contentious going into it? Was it contentious coming out of it? You had a great quip in the middle of it. What was your experience of that panel?
Thanks. There's a backstory to this panel that hasn't really been told, and it might be worth sharing. It's
quickly before you do, I just want to fully define. This is the Bitcoin in Media panel with Joe Hall, Pete Rizzo, Jemima Kelly, and Isabella. I'm spacing out Biscuit. Thank you. Highly, highly recommend if you didn't see it to watch it. Sorry to cut you off there, Joe.
And I'll paste the link again in the chat if you guys are watching.
I've actually since rewatched it, not for vanity purposes, but just to check if I was being a dick or not. And because I had this horrible panic like later on when everyone was like sending videos around the internet that, you know, I'd been memed and then I'd been gifted, and I was like, oh no, have I like really overdone this? Have I like done something horrible? And I watched it back and was like, no, like they were awful. Well, not awful, but they were quite rude in that they didn't really let us speak and they kept interrupting us and that sort of thing. Anyway, yeah, the Bitcoin media panel was put together to highlight how the media treats Bitcoin. And I think the segment that we had, you know, it was a 45-minute segment that got extended to an hour because the sparks were flying and it was quite controversial. And the audio video team apparently were the ones to ask for the segment to be extended because they were enjoying it so much and they were learning A, so much about Bitcoin, and B, so much about how the media hates Bitcoin. And the premise was to discuss Bitcoin's media problem and why it's portrayed in the way it is. You know, we've all seen the headlines from Bitcoin boils the ice caps to, you know, Bitcoin mining uses more energy than insert medium-sized country here, all those sorts of things. And the idea was to discuss that with people that write about Bitcoin on the regular. So you had Jemima Kelly, who's a columnist at the Times. And the reason why I pitched her is because she has written headlines such as there is a moral case against crypto and you cannot separate Bitcoin and crypto. It was something about maximalism. Oh, don't believe the maximalists. That was it. You can't separate Bitcoin and crypto. So she's got quite a chip on her shoulder with regards to Bitcoin as well as crypto, and she often just bundles them in together. And then you had Isabella Kaminska, who has sort of come around to Bitcoin, and she's what Rizzo calls a doom coiner, in that she finally understood why we might need Bitcoin in sort of March and April 2020. And now apparently she has stacked some sats, although on stage on Thursday, she admitted that she hasn't bought any Bitcoin, but that could just be amazing OPSEC. You know, maybe she's playing us, you know? Yeah.
I mean, you guys did talk about how you lost your Bitcoin immediately in a freak. I think it was like a boating accident.
We literally all got on one of those, I think we had a Ledger sponsored boat tour that just so happened every single person who attended it and went on that boat tour, all the boats crashed. Wild.
Immediately. It was, yeah.
Tragic. But please continue.
And then, yeah, Rizzo, obviously he was CoinDesk. Well, he was mainstream. He was Reuters or something, right? And then CoinDesk and then Bitcoin Magazine. So he'd effectively crossed the sort of spectrum of maximalism. And there's me, who was, you know, Bloomberg, and then various other sort of mainstream pitches. And then Cointelegraph, where I'm sort of the in-house maxi, I guess. This is a title that I'm now giving myself, by the way. And before we stepped on stage, Jemima backstage said to me, "Hi Joe, are you going to be a little bitch to me again like you are on Twitter?" So she came out swinging.
No fucking way.
And I was like, "Oh, hello Jemima, lovely to see you too." And yeah, she said the same thing to Peter McCormack later on, and he did not like that.
Dude, oh my God, the drama.
This is incredible. This is more than I had ever possibly hoped for in terms of drama.
I mean, you didn't hear about the debacle backstage, P? Oh my God. That's not safe for live content right now. Yes, needless to say, I point blank looked Jemima Kelly in the face and told her, "You're being a bitch."
Oh,
I was like, "You just
Jesus." All right. Well, you guys had incredible aplomb on stage, given that being the introduction, or like what happened immediately preceding.
She was joking on, and like we do have a good enough relationship for her to be able to say that to me, and me not to like take it personally or seriously. And I was like, "Oh, come on, like, you know, what have I done to you on Twitter?" She was like, "You were liking comments that were critical of me." I was like, "Yeah, but you're spouting bollocks about Bitcoin. So what, you know, it's Twitter. Like, please don't censor me putting hearts on, you know, maxis, you know, sending gifts or whatever."
Oh man.
So yeah,
we should be allowed to like whatever our heart desires.
Exactly, right? Let me love. Anyway, that was just checking the crypto guy is still here. He's still here. So we got cracking with the actual debate after, you know, things settled. We did all our greetings, and they were feisty and they were ready to go. And you know, you can see on the video that Jemima has a point to make, you know, to every question, even if the question isn't pointed at her. So it was, yeah, there wasn't much debating going on, because ultimately I don't think that Jemima's understanding of Bitcoin is to the level of, say, Isabella's understanding, of the level of my understanding, or Pete's. So we're always going to have a sort of dislocated discussion about it. It's the same as if you were to put, I don't know, Ben Ark on stage with Michael Saylor. You know, that they're gonna have a really weird conversation, right? Because they have these completely different understandings of what Bitcoin is, whether it's Bitcoin the tool or Bitcoin, you know, the tech, or and so on. And yeah, I think that the best thing we could do, Pete and I on stage, was to keep our mouths shut, because the more and more that you know, Jemima spoke, the more and more it became clear to us and to the audience that she was, you know, not making a lot of sense, in that there was a lot of contradictions being said. There were a lot of things that she was holding a lot of ideas in her head that were contradictory, such as Bitcoin is an amazing invention and Bitcoin is also a headless Ponzi. Like, I mean, that just doesn't ring true, at least in my sort of understanding of rationale and logic. And yeah, I think you both saw it play out. And there was a couple of times when Jemima was trying to sort of put the blame back onto me. That's what led to the creation of this funny sort of segment where she was like, you know, I've been in Bitcoin way longer than you. And I was like, yes, you have. And then I was like, but I do know Bitcoin better than she does. And, you know, all you have to do is read her articles to see her understanding of Bitcoin. And her understanding of Bitcoin shows that, you know, Bitcoin isn't scarce because it can be copied and forked into all these other coins, which, as we know, is not Bitcoin not being scarce. It just shows that Bitcoin is technology which you can fork. It doesn't, you know, there's still maybe hundreds of thousands of nodes all around the world that are confirming the original blockchain. They're not going to go off and confirm BSV or what, you know, Bitcoin Cash or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was quite arduous. And then afterwards we came off stage and everything was all okay. And then Peter McCormack came over, and that's when sparks flew again.
Interesting. Well, I will say, despite all that, as someone who did not have to experience any of it, I'm super glad she was there, because I think these types of, you know, let's say, I don't want to say controversies, but like that kind of tension is super important for Bitcoin and for the space, you know? So props to her for being willing to get on stage and, is it fair to say, make a fool of herself?
Exactly.
I'm here for it.
No, I mean, I DM'd her afterwards and was like, you know, I admire you for doing this and for coming down. Like, that was very brave. And, you know, could I do that at a FT or a Fiat conference? Do they do Fiat Amsterdam 2022? Is that a thing?
They should, just
so
so you can go.
Yeah, if so, I am there. Feel free to dunk on me. So that is awesome. But it does go, like, the job was done. It highlighted that the media does not understand and does not want to understand Bitcoin, and the way in which she sort of contested things and threw it back at us every time showed that she wasn't willing to sort of go a little bit deeper. You could be really cynical and say, okay, is this the UK's next Peter Schiff? Is this going to be Jemima's brand, and she's going to play off that, and she's going to get a name in the space as being like the, you know, the baddie in the UK for Bitcoin adoption, which would be quite a smart play, right? You know, people have made brands off worse things. I'm not sure.
Yes, I kind of want to unpack just like a little bit of, I guess the narrative Jemima kept pushing was this idea that, you know, Bitcoin has no real world use cases. And I think you are a perfect example, and you attempted, at least, as did everyone on that panel, as did everyone afterwards in that huddle up with McCormick and others, try to convince her to see that there is a level of privilege in which we get to make that claim and say that, well, I don't need to use Bitcoin, so therefore it is useless. How much of this do you prescribe to just being ignorance versus an unwillingness to learn?
I made that exact point on stage. I said, do you not think that, you know, one of the reasons you don't get Bitcoin is you will never need it? And it's true. She might be able to live and lots of people will be able to live their entire lives without needing Bitcoin. Lots of people do. And that's absolutely fine. And we've got to be okay with that too. Like, Bitcoin is for everyone, and also Bitcoin doesn't give a fuck. So I think part of the reason why is that she's never going to get on a plane to, I don't know, Zambia or somewhere and realize, oh shit, this government is awful. Oh, the Bitcoin is the lifeboat for me. You know, we're all bleating this on a daily basis, aren't we? Saying, you know, fiat's going to zero and that Bitcoin's the lifeboat, and, you know, get off zero and all these things. But for lots of people, they're perfectly happy living in fiat world and having their fiat salary and having their fiat pension and having, you know, their diversified investments into all sorts of stocks and shares and ETFs and index funds. And I mean, I used to be like this, and that's how I used to live my life, and I found it really quite tiring. And now all you have to do is have a certain amount of Bitcoin and just focus on that number each month. It's a lot more freeing, I think, to live the way that that we do, or I do, as opposed to the fiat lifestyle. But you just wonder, what's the touch point that's going to not convert these people, but open up their eyes. In Canada, we had the trucker protests. I'm trying to think of more recent ones. In the Netherlands, there was the farmer protest, but there wasn't really much of a Bitcoin angle to that. And obviously, we've got Kanye's accounts being frozen, which is sort of an American touch point, right? I wonder if there's going to be a Bank of England thing, which happens similarly, where some figures' bank accounts will be frozen and they'll realize, oh, maybe I need some Bitcoin for this. So I don't know. I mean, Nigel Farage is certainly coming around to it, which is not surprising given his stance on freedom and those sorts of things. But he's also quite disliked. It was also quite funny is that Jemima Kelly was fanboying Nigel Farage afterwards. That I did not have my playbook for the day. I thought that would be the other way. I thought that would be more of a critique than the fanboy sort of
Totally.
thing.
Interesting.
It was really bizarre. Bitcoin,
Interesting.
Always surprising.
I want to get your thoughts on just, this idea that while Bitcoin can be for everyone, there's a certain image that when you have, I think, Nigel Farage coming around to Bitcoin, and then you have the likes of people like a Ted Cruz in America, who is also a very conservative political figure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you start to see, and I'm not trying to ignore other prominent people who are sort of take an opposite political stance on issues than these two individuals I've listed, but there seems to be this growing sentiment that Bitcoin has a conservative skew or bend. How much is that going to be a hurdle for mass global adoption? Because ultimately Bitcoin is meant to be for everyone, not just people who want freedom, but even for those who don't believe in freedom. Bitcoin is also for you. Yeah. As fucked up as that sentence sounds.
Yeah. I think it's only natural that those towards the right of the political spectrum would take this tool and run with it quicker, or those that believed in smaller state or the smallest state, i.e. anarchists. We saw that with the anarcho-capitalists first, who saw this Bitcoin thing and realized, oh, brilliant, this is a perfect way to organize our societies. And then we had the freedom lovers, the sort of right of the political spectrum. And I think it's a real risk that we can only that Bitcoin might only appeal to that sort of smaller subset of society. So we've got to be really careful to make sure that the message Bitcoin is for everyone does get out there. And I know that Bitcoin doesn't have a marketing team and that we're all technically part of it at the same time. It's one of those weird conundrums of Bitcoin. But yeah, that there needs to be more done so that, lefties, progressives, environmentalists, all these social groups realize that Bitcoin makes their lives better too and makes society's life better. We are seeing some progress in this regard from people like Peter McCormack. I know that he's doing a lot more with progressives and he's getting a lot more of those on his podcast. And it is, I think, the biggest Bitcoin podcast out there. But I don't know. I don't know exactly where I put myself on the spectrum because it depends on who I'm talking to. Like if I'm talking to Americans, I'd probably come across as some super lefty. But in the UK, I'm when it comes to people, I'm very left. When it comes to economics, I'm quite right. So yeah, there's no one party that really appeals to me. But I do, worry that the big names in the space, you mentioned Ted Cruz, obviously he's, Republican and classic sort of Republican figure as well. You know what I mean? He's quite like an alpha sort of type. And it's same with Nigel Farage.
I wouldn't call him a classic Republican.
Oh, okay.
I'm
throwing my aspersions onto American politics.
No, that's fine. I just don't like
Fucking
Ted Cruz. He's a spineless twat.
Okay. But yeah, with Nigel Farage as well, a highly divisive figure.
Yeah.
The media hates him, and yet he has a huge sort of fan base. So yeah, it would be really cool if some absolute communist came out and was like, I love Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the perfect tool for uniting the left. Wouldn't that be some weird sort of twist of events? But it would also make people realize, oh wait, this tool is completely apolitical. It's just money, and money should be apolitical. And if we were to run with this, then not just society but human flourishment would benefit. So yeah, it's a really valid point. And I mean, how can you remedy that? I guess you look for the influencers and the big names, the leadership in the left, and be like, yo, can I orange pill you? So maybe we should do that. I'm just spitballing here.
Yeah, I'm here for it. I'm not going to pretend I can contribute to that conversation, but I support you in it, Joe.
Thanks, man.
You're incredibly eloquent.
Just send me some sats. I'll give it a go.
Let's fucking go.
I will say, like, I feel like I'll say this and then YouTube will cancel our channel. So if I do, I'm sorry. But DB did tweet these things talking about how, like, if the Taliban were to use...
I'm kidding. Go ahead.
No, that was a great time to do that.
I thought that was YouTube doing that like instantly. I was like, wow, YouTube censorship is like next level.
On point.
But yeah,
no, you should say it. It's important.
If a certain organization based out of the Middle East were to be using Bitcoin for something as a legitimate use case, our CEO has openly said, like, we would invite them to speak at a Bitcoin conference, because ultimately it is a real life example of using Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is meant to be for everyone. We see in real time the countries that are more rapidly understanding and figuring out ways to adopt and use Bitcoin are countries that are deemed by Western media as the enemy. You have El Salvador as like this failed experiment and a dictator running the show using Bitcoin, like bad guys. You have Russia and Putin now accepting international trade in Bitcoin, and they've already been deemed as the bad guys. You have Iran that's always been under sanctions. They now accept Bitcoin for international trade. They're the bad guys.
COVID accepts Bitcoin apparently.
Exactly. See,
I heard that. I did hear that.
CNN is our source for that, and Fox News now apparently. Oh, it's breaking all over the place. So COVID now does accept Bitcoin. If you just buy and hold a little bit of Bitcoin, actually, I don't think I can say. I think we will genuinely get taxed.
You won't get COVID.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
You're about to get your ass banned, and by you I mean us.
Yeah, are you double stacked? Yeah, I'm double stacked. Yeah, I'm not gonna
Oh god.
Yeah, we're definitely getting this channel pulled today.
God damn it. Contain yourself, Q. Let's talk about what it's like living on a Bitcoin standard. Like how is that? How long have you been doing that, first of all?
Oh man, it's hard. I mean, do you want like the marketing thing of like,
yes,
Bitcoin's
give us
the
first of all, define for our guests, or for our audience, I should say, what it means to live on a Bitcoin standard. Then give us the marketing pitch where you're like, oh my God, it cures cancer. It's the best. I'm more fertile. COVID. And then give us the real take and be like, that was all lies. Here's the real deal.
Alrighty. Okay. So what do I define as a Bitcoin standard? I would, I just see it as just don't hold fiat. It's pretty, does what it says on the tin. So I get paid in Bitcoin, and all I hold is Bitcoin, and all I spend is Bitcoin. And I've been doing it now for a year and 4 months, something like that. It was summer last year when I just went all in. Not the best time to go all in, I guess, but maybe it was the best time to, the future me in 10 years time, who's like, that was a great time to do it. So, maybe this will look good in hindsight. And I did it because I wanted to follow my convictions. And I was like, you know what, I'm young enough. I really believe in this thing. And why bother with fiat? If it's going to zero anyway, then what's the point of carrying on with this thing and even taking up mental space? Like the idea that, I've got to deal with bank accounts and that sort of thing. That's not to say that I've closed my bank account, by the way. I do still have a bank account. I have two, because sometimes I have to accept international payments as well, which is really annoying because you're like, there is literally Bitcoin for this. Like it's like the primary use case, but that still does happen. What were the other questions? Sorry, P. I've got lost there again.
So you define sort of what it means to live on a Bitcoin standard. I mean, I was joking, but I was saying, like, give us the like glowing, like magical pitch, like I can fly, I can see through walls, but you can leave that out. The joke is already, the bit's already played out. But what is that actually like? Like, how do you navigate that on a day-to-day basis? What are some of the challenges you experience? And what are some of the surprising positive things that you've experienced on that?
Okay, sure. So I can only see through like dresses, so not quite walls, but it's still a pretty good trick. And the things that I really like about it is that it's simple, and I don't have to in a space where all we do is talk about money and investments and things, I don't have to think about money and investments and things. I just focus on how much Bitcoin I'm going to have at the end of the month and make sure it's more than I had at the end of last month, which is one of the basic tools or skills of personal finance that no one actually teaches you when you're growing up. Like no one tells you how to save. Like maybe your parents did if your family were good like that, but a lot of people learn about personal finance in their 20s, 30s, or a lot later, and it just boils it down to a very, very simple lesson, which is great, and which means that I can focus on my passions and my hobbies a lot more, which coincidentally are Bitcoin, but that doesn't matter. And then on top of that, the other stuff that sort of surprised me is how reticent people are to accepting Bitcoin. So, like you'll go to split the bill at the end of a dinner or, a bar tab or whatever. And usually I'm just like, oh, do you mind if I pay you in Bitcoin for that and you pay in fiat? And a lot of people, it's probably because I hang out with Bitcoiners, but a lot of people are like, yeah, sure, let me just send you the sats. And if it's their first time, they're like, oh, I don't know about that. And before you know it, you've set them on their orange pill journey and they've downloaded a Lightning wallet and you've sent them some sats their way. So that's sort of an unexpected, pleasant surprise about being on a Bitcoin standard, is that you are forced to orange pill people because it's your survival is dependent on your ability to orange pill those in your immediate area or those that you transact with most. On top of that, it's led to me orange pilling my landlord, which is kind of cool. So I pay my rent in Bitcoin. The other positives, I don't know. I just find it's quite freeing. I feel quite comfortable and quite happy being this way. I don't want to. I wouldn't want to go back to being on like a fiat standard with Bitcoin. I also don't have to deal with exchanges anymore, which is quite nice. The whole thing of like sending to cold storage and all that kind of thing. It's like, well, I get sent Bitcoin to me and that's mine, and then I get to do with it what I will. I know that sounds like a really minor thing, but there was a time maybe 2 years ago when I had like 7 different exchange accounts, and we all know now that they're all going to get doxed at some point. So. That's not ideal. Other positives to living on a Bitcoin standard. I mean, hey, it's no KYC Bitcoin, right? Isn't that the holy grail of Bitcoin? I don't need to mix my coins or anything. You get a lot of really cool sort of rewards programs from people like Bitrefill. I wouldn't be able to do this, by the way, without businesses like Bitrefill and the Bitcoin Company and Coin Corner and all of these businesses that make it easier to interact with the fiat rails with things like gift cards. So like Uber, they take Bitcoin technically because they accept gift cards for Bitcoin. Same with Adidas, H&M, Glovo, which is a European sort of food delivery app. IKEA just moved into a new flat, so that was kind of useful. All of these sort of big name brands, they do have some sort of interaction with Bitcoin, which is kind of cool. I think that's it for like positives that I can think of immediately. There might be some like subconscious or more deeper one that I haven't realized. Maybe I am a better surfer because I'm on a Bitcoin standard, but no one's told me yet. I would love it if that was true.
And specifically in your timing of catching the wave, that's improved because you don't worry with the fiat nonsense, right?
Exactly.
The math checks out there.
Yeah, but seriously, like in my personal life prior to Bitcoin, I would have spreadsheets upon spreadsheets. I get quite like into the data and get quite nerdy about it. But I was like trying to work out which stock to pick and which tracker to go with and all this crap. And I realized that it was taking up so much mental headspace. Like initially I was doing it once a month, then I ended up doing it once a week. And you keep track of all these things and you're like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I forced to try to make my money work for me when all I have to do with Bitcoin is earn it and don't spend as much as I earn? It's so simple. Like anyone can do it. So I just don't get, why you wouldn't be up for it. Obviously, yeah, the acceptance thing is an issue, bit of a hurdle, but it is getting better with time. There are more and more merchants accepting Bitcoin, and I am not shy to orange pill people, as people around me will attest to.
I think also, Joe, I want to bring up the story of like when I ran into you just 2 days ago, when you were wandering around Amsterdam and you were talking about how, I went to this one shop and they accepted Bitcoin the last time I was here, but then they no longer accepted Bitcoin.
Yeah, fucking not going to make it, honestly.
So what was the store that we're canceling in Amsterdam now, just for our audience?
So yeah, I bumped into you and you had 14 joints out your mouth and a couple of edibles in your hand, and I'm just throwing you under the bus here. And yeah, I wanted to spend a day like spending Bitcoin at all the places that accept Bitcoin, just to be like, high five, guys, keep doing the Lord's work. And I also wanted to like make some YouTube content while I was there and be like, you can live off Bitcoin in Amsterdam, as Pleb Music, shout out to Pleb Music, had demonstrated with his 48 hours in Amsterdam traveler guide, which is of course on this channel. Why am I shilling your channel? Can't help myself, can I? And
like and subscribe down below, guys. If you're listening to the podcast, hit that subscribe button.
You got it. And yeah, I went to these places to be like, I want to spend some sats here. The first place I got to, it's called like Cut Hair Barbers, and it was one of those places where you get your hair cut and also have a whiskey, kind of like cool and hip and millennial-esque. And talked to the waitress. She was like, no, we don't accept Bitcoin. We haven't accepted Bitcoin for 6 months. And I was like, but it says on my map here, which lists all the Bitcoin locations, they accept Bitcoin. And I was like, can I tip you in Bitcoin? Can I send some sats your way? And she's like, why would you do that? And I was like, why not? It's free money. And she's like, no, I don't want that. And I was pretty tired. And it was the day after 3 days of conferencing, quite hard. So I was like, fuck this, left and went to the next place and found a couple of places that were listed as question mark to Bitcoin adoption, and went in there and did my best attempt to be charming and pleasant to talk to. And yeah, they let me pay in Bitcoin there, so that was kind of cool. But then after that, obviously I bumped into UQ and relayed this story, and then after that I bumped into Pleb Music, of all people, and we did a video which might be out in the next couple of months depending on how busy I am, but we tried to send Bitcoin, like 15 euros of Bitcoin, to random people on the street by just being like, yo, what's up? Do you want some free money? And the responses were scandalous, borderline shocking. People were
Wait, give us a taste. Like what kind of...
Like one dude was like, basically like, go fuck yourself. He just wanted to troll us. It was quite funny. Like, was holding a microphone up and he just like put his fist in Max's face and was like, what do you think about this? And Max was like, well, I love it because I really like Bitcoin. It's just like being like very honest and innocent. And eventually the guy was like, next time learn Dutch. And we were like, who is this guy? So hopefully that one makes the cut. It depends on what the videographer reckons. There was one Ethereum maxi, which was quite funny to walk into, because we're like, can I show you how the Lightning Network works? It's like Ethereum, but it actually works. Like it's, just like gentle trolling, but she was having none of it and like walked off and was like, Ethereum to the moon, woo, Vitalik and unicorns and stuff. And then we managed to give out some Bitcoin, but it was mostly to tourists. Like the Dutch people we spoke to were like, it's a scam, like sod this. And yeah, so I think the running theme was that those that traveled or those that were visiting Amsterdam for the weekend were more open to the idea. I don't know if that's because when you travel, you open up your horizons and you're just more curious about life in general, or if it's just the fact that these guys just had more time on their hands and were happy to talk to, let's be honest, quite random, weird-looking blokes stood in a park offering free money. I find every time I do these videos that it's kind of weird because you're trying to do something cool. You're trying to be like, oh, like here's some free money. And people are just naturally a bit suspicious of this like weird dude who's giving out Bitcoin. So yeah, it's there's a lot to be done in terms of Bitcoin adoption, Bitcoin's marketing, Bitcoin's presence, all these things. We're in a bubble, guys. We're in a bubble.
I think that's a really interesting point. The bubble that we really often, sometimes for the sake of keeping what we say intact, keeping our mentality sort of at peace, we refuse to accept that people outside of this immediate Bitcoin bubble see the world the same that we do, when in fact we are very much a small fraction of the minority of the population. But we surround ourselves with like-minded folks. I wonder, like, I force myself to go out and deal with normies. I think it's an important exercise. Like,
when you force yourself? What do you mean by that?
Like, I will watch mainstream news.
Oh,
like,
I see.
I will take the time. I switch off every day for 30 minutes. It's a different news program, a different channel. But like I will ingest what mainstream media and normie culture, if we will, wants to perpetuate for the sake of at least understanding that perspective, because it's really important, because otherwise this just becomes an echo chamber of a conversation. I wonder if either of you guys have a hard time, I think, buying into some of the narratives outside of the bubble that we find ourselves in at times.
Wait. Is the question, do I think mainstream media is bullshit?
Sure, you can interpret it as such.
I mean, we talk about this like, 2 hours a day, every day. You should know my opinion. Yeah, we do. Yes, really? 100%.
I don't think you've ever shared your opinion. I feel like all you've done is equivocate and say, well, I don't know enough to make a strong enough opinion.
Fuck that noise. No, man. I mean, look, I think there's always a danger of otherizing, groups in the sense that it can sort of allow us to kind of hide our own failings or not, look at ourselves in the mirror and challenge ourselves. But at the same time, no, I think mainstream media is like, it's like fucking Charlie Munger says, right? You show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcome. And this is the case for every media outlet, but you have to understand where the incentives are. If you show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcome. And mainstream media is designed primarily to support dominant cultural narratives while selling as many, advertising spots as possible. And I think other media outlets are more focused on trying to thrive within their niche. And I think that most Bitcoin, if not all Bitcoin-focused media enterprises, because they're focused on Bitcoin, because that's part of their mission statement, their brand, they're still trying to do the same thing, right? Make no mistake. Like everybody is trying to be a profitable, successful business within the space that they're occupying, the niche that they're occupying. But I think that the subject matter is important. And as a general rule, I distrust mainstream media profoundly.
And you guys got it way worse now in America. I don't watch American news. Maybe I should start doing that. That'd be quite eye-opening. But I always feel that American news is even more sort of extremified, if that's a word.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I will never forget when I was in high school, my dad explained how on a family trip to Mexico somewhere, he just popped on the news and was like, wait, what? Like the Mexican news programs aren't trying to fear monger me into making me think World War III and or the next global famine or the next global plague is just around the corner. It's like that's the carrot they dangle for the American audience. So I will agree that U.S. media in particular has a fear mongering bend and I talk about this a lot. It really falls into one of four categories, and that those are the four horsemen of the apocalypse. They really try to cater to that audience. It's every news station. It's the same stories for one reason only, to scare a certain subset of the population that the end of days is here and you should watch us because we were the ones who told you about this potential apocalyptic event happening first.
Wow. Sounds fun. I mean, I'm coming to the US soon. Maybe I'll just, sit down.
Why are you leaving Portugal? Why would you
come
do
through
that?
Nashville?
Well, this is it, right? No, it's the I'm going to Pacific Bitcoin to cover it.
Oh, nice. We'll hang out some more. We'll smoke.
Yeah, are you going to be there?
It's in my backyard.
Oh, of course. You're California based. Wait, when you say backyard, you mean because your backyard is probably bigger than Portugal.
I mean, to be honest, my backyard is the beach, so not literally my backyard, but just a few miles up the street.
Oh wow, that sounds amazing. I mean, my backyard is also the beach.
Flex.
Yeah. This is the reason I'm moving.
P, what's your backyard?
Definitely not the beach. It
sucks to be you then.
Yeah.
Where are you based, P?
Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh no. Oh, so Bitcoiner country.
Yep.
Cool.
Deep Bitcoiner country.
Yeah.
That's good. It's good. We got Bitcoin Park here, Bitcoin Magazine, Music City, all that jazz.
Yeah. And block clocks, right? That's the main thing.
That's right.
That's what Nashville's known for, block clocks.
As far as the eye can see.
Joe, Bitcoin has taken you to loads of different places. What is one place that may not be on the front of people's minds where you're like, this was the best hidden gem that, mind you, you're talking to mainstream media, so this will no longer be a hidden gem. So maybe give us your second best hidden gem so your best hidden gem can still be hidden.
I was going to say, yeah, because I've got to report on these things anyway, right? And the reason why I go to these places is because I hear a rumor and I'm like, ooh, well, why don't I just fly out there and check it out? I'm quite a hands-on old school reporter. I mean, a lot of news nowadays is made by just some dude seeing a tweet and reblogging it into a story. And I'm very guilty of this because that's, just how it works. And we've got to hit
That's
our
what we
targets
do.
too. Wait, you the guys that are stealing my content?
Yeah, pretty much.
At least
You're
the rest
welcome.
of that.
I opened Joe's Twitter page and I'm like, all right, what are we going to talk about today?
I mean, I don't tweet on my stories, so just go on my author profile. That'll help you out more.
Oh, dope. Thank you, bro.
You're welcome, bro. Yeah, but no, the Bitcoin Magazine Twitter and socials are so much more on it than the Cointelegraph socials are. Like we'll post something like, this happened the other day with the Nigel Farage interview where he said like, I'm a hodler and eventually it'll become legal tender. And the Bitcoin Magazine, your social media account was instantly like, Nigel Farage says Bitcoin's become legal tender. And obviously that gets way more like traffic than the original article. And I'm like, why doesn't our social media team do this? Like,
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, no, you're doing a good job of it. Bravo. And I mean, the best ideas are stolen. Isn't that thing about painters? I don't know where that expression.
There are no such thing as original ideas.
That's it.
Mike Germano got mad at me when I said that.
Oh, really?
He's like, that doesn't make you original for saying that.
Oh. Fair.
So,
yeah. Sorry.
I have a non-Bitcoin related question. What do you do when you're not thinking about writing it? What? Fuck.
Same question to you, P.
Yeah.
What do I do when I'm not talking about Bitcoin?
Yeah.
I mean, all sorts of random shit. I always have random hobbies. Now, eating shoes, sure. Chickens. I'm building I have a rabbit hutch and a chicken hutch, and I'm going to be warming them through the winter with some ASIC miners. So that'll be exciting. So figuring out how to do that.
Oh, it's going to be like Pollo feed, but like ASICs Pollo feed.
Exactly. They get heat.
I'm sure.
Yeah. It'll be like that. All sorts of random stuff. It all comes back to Bitcoin. I'm not going to lie to you. It's always just, it's like 2 to 3 hops, Kevin Bacon style, before it's back to Bitcoin. That's all I am. It's my entire personality.
Okay. Wait, so what do I do outside of Bitcoin?
Yeah, I guess I was asking, like, what are some of your, what do you do when you're not thinking about Bitcoin? What do you do when you're not writing about Bitcoin? What do you do for fun?
Yeah, sure. I love to surf, and I really like big waves, hence why I came to Portugal. I really want to get into proper big wave surfing, and I thought this was the winter to do it. To pay for like an actual big wave course where you hold the weights underwater and you like hold your breath for like 2.5 minutes and you eventually end up in Nazaré where you get towed into like the big waves. It's like on my bucket list and I'm preparing myself to it, but it's a mental battle more than a physical battle. So every time it gets a bit like on the cusp of my comfort zone here, I go out there anyway and I send it and I always come back like, yeah, that was totally worth it. But oh my God, I think I'm gonna have nightmares about how long I was held down there. So that's what I like to do. I also love, this is classic millennial chat, but I love to travel. I love experiencing new cultures and new things. But I genuinely really do. And I always try to see it through the eyes of a local, which is, again, the classic millennial thing. Live like a local,
You're a piece of shit.
Your Airbnb and...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. secretly, I'm just in a hotel somewhere being like, yeah, take a photo and then go home. But no, so I'm learning, I'm improving my Portuguese. I actually got invited on a Brazilian podcast. Shout out to Bitcoinheiros, which is the biggest sort of Portuguese speaking channel. As I've also realized that in order to make Bitcoin, the thing around the world. Oh shit, we've gone back to Bitcoin. I've Kevin Bacon myself. I've Kevin Bitcoined. Oh no, it literally is.
I'll allow it, but watch yourself, counselor.
Yeah. Shit. I've always loved languages though. This is pre-Bitcoin, and I always wanted to be like a polyglot, like speak several languages. And I'm now at 4. I mean, my Portuguese isn't like that amazing. I can't write in it very well, but I'd like to be able to do podcasts like this in Brazilian Portuguese, which I can do right now, but I'll only be able to talk about either football or Bitcoin, because that's all I talk about with taxi drivers in Portugal when we're driving along, because every taxi driver in Portugal knows football, and when they hear about Bitcoin, they've got loads of questions. So if there's an orange pill taxi driver, I've done it again. Oh my God, this is terrible.
You're doing fine. It's okay. It takes practice. It's just like holding your breath underwater.
Orange pill therapy is terrible.
You have no personality. It's
yeah,
okay, You're talking to 2 guys who also don't have any personality.
Yeah. fiat goes to zero and your personality goes to zero in the Bitcoin space. Jesus.
So is that what fiat gives you, a personality?
Probably. Yeah.
It's the weirdest turn of this conversation.
I mean, I'm just trying to not say the B word right now. I'm trying to see if
we can embrace it. We can say the B word. We're here. We're doing it's Bitcoin Magazine Live. Let's do it.
All right. See, at least I have the strongest will of the three of us.
You do.
You guys just immediately took it back to Bitcoin.
Absolutely.
So on the topic of Bitcoin, however, Joe, there was an awesome video that you put out, I think a couple months ago now, where you were paying with a Bolt card, I believe, via the Lightning Network, while at the same time, someone was trying to pay with, I believe, a MasterCard on the credit card payment rails.
Yeah.
And the Lightning Network was accepted and approved faster than the credit card payment. Like, we don't need to, I think, list over all of the benefits of Lightning, but I would like to know when that shopkeeper saw that transaction happen faster, understanding the benefits of, oh, now on top of that, I don't need to give my 2.5-3% kickback to the banks involved. Like, why wouldn't I accept this? Like, what was that interaction really like?
I mean, the shopkeeper, bless her, she had no idea what was going on. You know that in the shops, it's places that accept Bitcoin. There's often like the merchant or the owner who's passionate about it. It's like mega orange pilled, and he's just told his staff who are just there to do their job and go home, and they just see it as, this is my 9 to 5. This is it. It might be a stopgap, whatever position they're in. And it's like, okay, from next week we're accepting Bitcoin. It's this terminal, and when someone says, "Can I pay in Bitcoin?" you turn on this terminal, and it was literally like that for her. So when I was like, "Hey, can I buy this pasty?" It was in a bakery in Gibraltar. Can I buy this pasty? Can I buy 2 of the same pasties? And one of them is going to be paid in fiat money. She was like, "What's fiat money?" I was like, "Oh shit, okay. Can one of them be this terminal? The other one be the Bitcoin terminal? And I'm going to pay for them at the same time. And would you mind holding the camera while I do it?" And she was like, "Yeah, all right." I was like, "I'll give you a good tip. Don't worry." And yeah, she was down for it. So her reaction was, not. I think she's just more like bamboozled. Like, what is this bloke doing? But I get this.
Move on, kid. Like, I got work to do.
Yeah. It was genuinely one of those. But the other hand in it is the franchise owner. So it's a guy called Neil who owns lots of franchises in Gibraltar, and he was trying to roll out Lightning, and he now has these statistics on what Lightning does for business. Like how El Salvador is kind of this testbed for what it means to accept Bitcoin as a merchant, and what that means for your revenue and what that means for your business moving forward, and then the projections you can make from that. Well, he's doing a similar thing in Gibraltar. And so I think he would be a good guy to ask, what does this mean for your business? But she was, pretty nonplussed about it. But that video went mega, like for Twitter, it went mega viral. It's like got over 600,000 views, which for like a little Twitter video, which I literally just did on a whim and thought, fuck it, let's do this and see what happens, see if fiat is actually quicker. And bear in mind as well that obviously the fiat didn't settle instantly, because in Gibraltar as well, they have pound and euro accounts. And some people even have dollar accounts because it's on the cusp of like Europe. And it's also a British overseas territory. So it's like a really complicated financial system. But the Bitcoin, obviously, as we know, settles instantly. Whereas the fiat, I mean, that might settle in 3 days. It might settle in 3 weeks. We don't actually know what goes on behind the screen. We just know that the point of sale has said transaction approved. And we're just expected to believe that. Whereas we know that with the Lightning transaction, it's properly gone through. So yeah, it's... But it also just goes to show the power of the virality of Twitter, right? Sometimes you can put no effort into a tweet and it'll get, 50,000 impressions. And sometimes you spend hours choosing the right emoji and it flops. And you're like, fuck you, algorithm.
I just had this image of you staring at the screen, swapping through emojis, and your significant other being like, Cardano, it's our safe word. It's our safe word. Get out, pull out. And you're just like, I can't.
Fortunately, she's in New York right now, so I can select emojis all night long. We're good.
You said that so salaciously. Gonna pour a glass of wine and...
What?
I have no idea what that
Joe,
means.
it's probably a good thing that she's not there right now.
This would be the end of the relationship.
I want to ask, Joe, we didn't really get a chance to talk about this when we were on the news desk together, but since we were together on the news desk, we've seen Kanye West in the news every single day at this point. first getting unbanked by JP Morgan, then the Satoshi Nakamoto hat, now the most recent stuff with him buying Parler. A, do you use Truth Social, for example? B, would love your general thoughts on just Kanye West and the debacle.
Man, I mean, I thought P's take yesterday, because I tuned in yesterday, was pretty good. The Kanye West story is kind of a non-starter. I don't know if he was wearing it just to, flex a bit, but he has been a Bitcoiner for a long time, and it takes a few Google searches to realize that, okay, this is not the first time that Kanye has mentioned Bitcoin or expressed, his support for what we're going to call it, just Bitcoin.
Awareness.
Yeah. As for Kanye, I am really not I have no idea about him the way that I would do about other celebrities. I listened to a couple of his albums as a teenager, and a few of them in my early 20s, but I don't follow him at all. In terms of I don't. Yeah, sorry. It just wasn't part of my social fabric growing up.
What do Brits? I always figured Brits had no culture whatsoever. Zero modern culture. No
Dude,
modern
we've got
culture
loads of culture. It's just shit culture.
Modern culture, you guys very clearly lack. And just to be honest, it kind of feels like it's the playbook for all of your culture, which is let's just steal and copy the good stuff from everyone else's culture and then bring it back to our borders. And
Dude, I feel quite triggered right now. No, well, if you're talking about music, then Britain was all new music used to come out of Britain. That's now we less so. Yeah, in the past 10 years we've had some really crappy genres that have popped up, but they're not very they've not exploded onto the world. Now all the music basically comes out of the US, right? Although Afro beats and African influences are now dominating the UK charts, we get loads of Nigerian songs coming through, and that's really cool. And I think that in 10 years' time it will just be Afro beats in the chart, which I'm actually kind of down for, because I mean I used to party a lot in the Ivory Coast, and man, those parties are so much better than any London club. It's just so much fun. But yeah, the actual UK culture, we're not great on it anymore. Since the internet has really taken over, we look way more to America than we do to the UK. And on top of that, I haven't really lived in the UK for the past 5 years, so when I go back and hear what my friends are talking about, I'm kind of a bit like, what? And it all seems a little bit fiat to me, but maybe it's because it's fiat and UK, and I'm less in tune with it. I'm trying to think of examples.
For some reason,
sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm terrible at interrupting guests and my co-host. I get super excited and then I'm like, ah! But something you just said, he was like, yes, that's exactly what happens every day.
It's just silent approval.
Something you said just reminded me, I'm very curious, where do you think we are headed as a kind of global community? Let me clarify that, because that's an asinine statement or asinine question. I recently reread The Mandibles. I don't know if you've read that book.
On the list, as well as all the other Bitcoin books that I've got. I was going to list reading as one of my hobbies, but then my reading is basically Bitcoin books.
There you go.
No, Mandibles is excellent.
It's so good. It's so good. And it's so good. And it's very interesting because, of course, it does not include Bitcoin. It's separate from that. And I think that actually makes it so much more powerful, because it's sort of what could the world look like? What could a world look like without something like Bitcoin? My question to you is, how do you see the next, or what are the possibilities in terms of how the relationships between, Russia, China, the US, all the central banks, how do you think those might play out? What are your top 3 scenarios over the next 5 to 10 years?
Wow, big question. Top 3 scenarios. I mean, yeah, geopolitically speaking, I think that we in the West are kind of redundant and irrelevant. What's the average age now in the US? 40, similar to the UK and Europe. We're an aging population. We've got this huge debt burden. We've got these old people that want their state pensions. I don't know if that exists in the US, but we've got huge bills for the governments to pay each year. And yet, a couple of 100 miles south of me in Africa, you've got an average age of 18, thriving culture, this like endless, boundless optimism and hope for the future, which just comes naturally from there being young people everywhere, because young people just tend to be a bit more, hopeful because they've got the whole life stretching out ahead of them. So I think we're going to see a real pivot to Africa. And, people talked about this last century that, it's going to be the century for Africa and, African culture and export and trade and that sort of thing. But I think that this century, thanks to Bitcoin, we're going to see a real pivot and more focus on African culture influencing American culture, influencing UK culture. We're seeing snippets of it, as I mentioned, in music already, but I think it's going to become more so from, I think that, we'll get more innovation there and more, more inventions, let's say. I mean, just from a population standpoint as well, you've got 220 million people in Nigeria, like 1 in 5 Africans are Nigerians, and they're all pretty young, and they're all going to get married and have kids soon. What does that mean for their economy? That means like new houses, new cars, new fridges, microwaves, all these things which end up in like mass. It's not like not fiat consumerism, because people still have to have houses to live in and microwaves and things to have in the houses. But that's a huge economic boost. Same with places like Egypt. There's 1 million marriages last year in Egypt. 1 million. Like, what does 1 million marriages even look like? I mean, maybe actually in the US you have that every year anyway. But for me as a Brit, I was like, holy shit, that's so huge. That means 1 million wedding ceremonies, as well as 1 million new cars, new houses, all these things that you get when you move into a new home together to start a new family together. Whereas the
2 million marriages in 2019 in the US.
How many?
2 million in 2019.
Well, there you go. Shit. I mean, it just goes to show my tiny island and its irrelevance on the world stage.
You can cross off your bingo cards, listeners. Sorry, it's an ongoing joke. I always accidentally mute myself when I'm trying to talk.
I will say this is the longest you've gone without being muted. Like we're almost at the end of the episode. So,
but wait, so I'm curious. What is the per capita like number of marriages per year for both those countries?
Like the world?
Maybe per capita is the wrong term. Like per, what's the ratio of marriages over population?
That is a cool question.
Q, I guess I didn't make it clear. I'm looking at you since you have your Google up.
Looking these numbers up. All right. So you have 2 million marriages a year on the population of about 330 million in the US. So less than 1% of the population is getting, actually, that's not true, because a marriage technically should be 2. So that's 4 million. So it's a bit more than 1%.
Interesting.
1.2% of the US population at the 2 million weddings a year number are getting married.
Interesting. Okay.
And then, of course, we're talking about a 50 to 55% divorce rate. So,
well, this is it, right? There's more marriages in the US naturally anyway, because there's more divorces.
Interesting.
Whereas, well, I don't know if it would work like that, but you assume somewhere like Egypt, where it's Muslim or Islamic country, they're only supposed to get married once. Whereas in Western democracies, people get divorced more often, don't they? Like in France, the divorce rate's like 40% or something. It's crazy high.
Wow.
I mean, the US
people
is like
saying
over
Egypt is poor in the comments. Well, yes, that's not my point. The point is where we're going.
Yeah. Okay, but yeah, so let's bring it back. Sorry, I distracted us. What are the scenarios?
Yeah. In terms of Russia, China, US, global dominance. I don't know, man. Yeah, I don't know enough about these sorts of things. I'm not a macro guy either. Frankly, the words, when people start talking about macro, I tend to just switch off. It's not my area of Bitcoin that gets me out of bed.
Cool. So then I want to present a few scenarios for you.
Go for it. I'm all ears.
World War III has already begun.
Who am I shooting?
Hear me out on this. Hear me out on this crazy take. But I fully believe that when history writes about this period in time, unfortunately, World War III will have started as far back as 2020 in the history books, because World War III is not going to be nation state versus nation state, but rather citizen versus state.
Okay. I thought you were going to link it into Ukraine, Russia, and be like, that was. So.
No, that's a psyop.
You heard it here first. Original thought from Q.
Okay. Who did you steal that from? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a degree of this.
Was it Mike Germano? Did he tell you that?
I feel like you have like dice that are like, what's the appropriate conspiratorial response? It's a psyop.
Yeah.
Contrails. Flat
and out. Yeah.
You do know that all of my takes, I just secretly roll dice odds say continue down the path, even say take a new course.
Fair enough.
Like that is how this show is written.
What's the argument against this? That this is nothing new. Everyone since forever has always thought the world is going to end and the economic implosion was imminent, and that this debt spiral is going to lead to all these doomsayers. It's kind of fashionable right now to be a doomsayer and to be like, oh, how can governments continue like this? It's like, well, because they've done it forever. They've always been pretty shitty, and they're not changing anytime soon. It's they're not an argument.
Rizzo had a really excellent quote that I'm going to butcher it and not cite where he took it from, but in that same vein, Joe, of like, humans have lasted through every single quote unquote end of times that have come and passed. Like we're still here standing, kicking and thriving. So if there's nothing quite as resilient as humans and just society in general.
Yeah.
Now civilizations, on the other hand, those
not very good at doing it.
No.
Okay, but wait. So I asked what are the scenarios. I feel like we never got an answer. We sort of like, partially my fault.
Yeah, well, I don't really have an answer.
All right,
I'm not trying to avoid the question. It's just that I don't have a good.
He doesn't like your question. He's just too nice and polite, like to actually say.
This is British culture right now.
Yeah.
I thought Brits are a little bit more like direct. Like if you were Canadian, I'd be like, this is the Canadian in you, just being too nice and polite. But I kind of feel like Brits are a little.
No, I have a different take. I think what's happened is it's a question that Joe reasonably does not have an answer for. And instead of doing what we do, Q, where you just sort of pontificate wildly and you're like, here's what is exactly going to happen. We're going to ride in on the giant lobsters. There's going to be saddles. They'll be made out of leather. Cow leather, of course, because obviously cow leather. Then Putin will come in. He'll start waving the lifesaber around. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. But
I got a scenario. I got a scenario for Joe. There's two options, but the third option is death because you are now the last person on earth. There is no living food available. However, you stumble across one household that somehow has kept two things in check: a 3D printer with USDA certified printer meat, or a USDA certified cricket burger patty.
What is happening right now?
Which one would you prefer to eat?
Dude,
3D printed
USDA
meat?
means nothing to me anyway. Like I
Exactly.
Did not grow up with USDA.
I was just saying.
It's USDA?
Fuck, man. Why didn't you say so?
All right. So do you want to eat the 3D printed meat or the bug meat?
Joke's on you because I'm vegetarian.
Fair enough.
But then technically
you're going to die of rickets.
Both of these?
To be honest, if it's a question of survival, then obviously I will eat meat. Like I don't eat meat for like environmental reasons or weird like not messed up reasons, for ethical or moral reasons. But I'm going to Mexico in January, and I used to live there in like 2013, and they eat crickets there. It's like a local specialty, like chapulines, and they're actually kind of tasty. And I was thinking, like, wow, like I wonder where Klaus Schwab got his inspiration from, But yeah, so I would actually eat the bugs, and I can't wait for that to become a GIF or a meme somewhere,
You and P can just go off on your little Bitcoin citadel and eat your bugs in peace and leave the rest of us meat-eating Bitcoiners alone.
There must be other like veggie or vegan Bitcoiners around, no?
Yeah, I won't. I learned yesterday that there is now he has eaten eggs, so he is no longer fully vegan.
Yeah.
But there is someone in our midst who has been vegan. And
This is a relatable story for all of our guests watching. There's someone in your midst who was vegan and is now eating eggs.
Apparently Sailor's a vegan. Yeah. You heard it first.
There you go. My friends, I feel like we've reached the natural conclusion of this incredibly exciting episode today. All joking aside, this has been super fun. Joe, we have not interacted before, but I really enjoyed watching you at the conference. I hope that we get to hang out in person at some point in the near future. It sounds like you're going to pack Bitcoin. If you make it over to Nashville at some point, please let us know. We've got Bitcoin Magazine headquarters here. Where can people find you? Where can they follow you? What should they be paying attention to?
And P, I want to check out your rabbit hutch.
Oh, yeah.
Come on, like I'm coming to Nashville. I want to check out the rabbit hutch.
Yeah,
my friend used to keep a rabbit and he called it Biggie Smalls. What are your rabbits called, just out of interest?
So we have one of the smallest species of rabbit you can get, which is a dwarf Holland lop, and one of the largest species that you can get, which is a Flemish giant, which ours is not, but they get about like this big, like the size of a corgi. You can Google it, Flemish giant.
That's awesome.
So we like to do everything in opposites. It's the only way.
Are you going to eat it?
No, we thought about it at one point, but they're just like too cute. They're too adorable.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay.
We would if we had to, but why not?
I have a legit question. Can you eat meat, like if a cow or a chicken dies of natural causes, or do you have to take its life earlier?
Oh no, I would just get ill because it's been so long that I haven't eaten meat. Like when I have accidentally eaten meat, I haven't like punished myself and like whipped myself for my sins. Like I stopped eating meat to impress a girl. And
Shut up! You're not serious, are you?
Yes, I am.
Are you still with the same girl? At least
not even.
No.
You played yourself. You played yourself, Joe.
Tell me your current girlfriend eats meat.
And Sophie's mum used to be a pig farmer, so it's like scandalous that she doesn't eat meat.
Wow.
She was veggie when we started seeing. She was like semi-veggie when we started seeing each other, and then just because I didn't eat meat, and basically I stopped eating meat, and I just couldn't be bothered to go back to it. There was a brief period of time when I was dreaming about steak, but man, like just couldn't be bothered, and I just didn't want to.
I cannot wait to take you to In-N-Out. I'm going to take you to In-N-Out. I'm telling
What's
you. What's
In-N-Out?
Don't even.
The best cheeseburger of your goddamn life.
All right, Joe, where can people find you? Where can they stay abreast of everything?
Yeah, at Joe Nakamoto. Oh, look, it's written on the top bottom left.
There you go.
On Twitter, I'm trying to start a TikTok, but I keep putting it off. And yeah, Twitter is the main one. Oh, if you have any lovely Bitcoin stories about how you're changing the world or doing something really fun and creative with Bitcoin, please DM me. I'd love to have a chat to you and maybe write about it. Sorry that I'm shilling my Cointelegraph work on Bitcoin.
No, that's what we asked for.
It's kind of my job.
Absolutely.
No, you should do your job.
Yeah.
All right, my friends. Like and subscribe, follow, all that stuff. If you have not already gotten a ticket, Bitcoin 2023 is just around the corner. You can use code BMLive to save 10%. And we will see you here tomorrow.
Let's tell them. So everyone at Bitcoin Magazine had a lot of FOMO and was really upset that they don't have the Satoshi Nakamoto hat that Kanye has now been seen wearing. So you can now buy your own Satoshi Nakamoto hat at the Bitcoin Magazine store and use promo code BMLive to get 10% off of that.
Boom.
There you go, my friends. There you go.
Market asked for it, we deliver it.
Can I also say that it was a real pleasure being on with you boys. Thank you very much for having me on. And that was great. I really enjoyed it. I hope I didn't embarrass myself too much, but just like a good amount. And yeah, it was lovely. So thank you. I look forward to meeting you in person, Pete, and to hanging out we call it PAC now? PAC Bitcoin?
LA. No, just we're going to hang out in LA. It'll be a good time, bro.
Hang on in LA, bro. I'm going to send you a song by a British band that's called Come Out to LA, and you might not like it.
I'm going to send you a lot of LA hip hop just so you can get ready.
Sick. Okay.
All right, you guys have your homework. My friends, we'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place. Peace.